Well, let's get started. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to welcome you all. It's so lovely to see people face to face at ASAP once again. My name is Madura Watanakes. I'm the manager for competitive procurement at USAID's Southeast Asia Smart Power Program, or SPP. We have a very interesting agenda prepared for you today. So before I introduce our esteemed speakers, I'd like to give you an overview of USAID SPP and what we do. So USAID Southeast Asia Smart Power Program, or SPP, is the flagship clean energy program funded by the USAID RDMA, Regional Development Mission for Asia. We aim to deliver technical assistance to to the whole region, but we work directly with 7 of the 10 ASEAN countries, excluding Singapore, Malaysia, and Brunei, as there are advanced economies. Our goals are to help deploy 2,000 megawatts of advanced energy systems, mobilize $2 billion in clean energy financing, and increase international energy trade by 5%. Our program was officially launched by President Biden in 2022 at the US ASEAN Special Summit. And we work in the region across the region, closely collaborating with both international and regional institutions. So I had some slides, but so the topic for today is the private sector's role in driving the clean energy transition, and how the US government and other donor agencies even can help to support this and accelerate the transition. We've been seeing a rapidly growing appetite from the private sector to procure clean energy and engage in other decarbonization activities to help meet the corporate commitments and respond to the climate conscious consumer. And companies are realizing that unlike 5 or 6 years ago, simply putting rooftop solar on your factories is no longer going to cut it. So we've seen formations of coalitions like RE100 or the Clean Energy Buyers Association, for instance, that help to connect and amplify industry voices, and also to help expand the pool of potential buyers of clean energy from what we would think of traditionally as power sector stakeholders. And these coalitions also help to strengthen the leverage in advocating for regulations that accommodate clean energy procurement. USAID RDMA also has initiated one such coalition known as the Corporate Clean Energy Alliance, or CCEA, which we will be hearing about in more detail later. For CCEA, it's a coalition that aims to be a regional platform for companies that work in the countries that our SPP program covers, as a forum to share information and experiences and help increase awareness and climate ambition in the region. Collectively, the 15 current members of CCEA represent a electricity demand collectively of over 10,000 gigawatt hours annually. Their investments total roughly $2.1 billion US, and they employ over 1 million people in Southeast Asia. So these figures might give you some idea of the collective leverage that can be achieved when industry voices are unified. So with that, I would like to turn it over to our keynote speaker. So I hope the most recent agenda reflects this, but we've had some last minute changes. And unfortunately, our keynote speaker, our original scheduled keynote speaker can't be with us today. So Eva, who is Eva Kelly Oberender, who is the CEO of the Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency Partnership, or REAP, has so graciously stepped in to provide the keynote address for us. So please welcome Eva.
Thank you, Madhura, for the introduction and also for the invitation to participate in the session today. My name is Eva Kelly. I am the CEO of REAP. REAP is a quasi-international organization. We build, design, and implement targeted financing instruments for the clean energy sector. We specialize predominantly in structuring incentives for small and medium enterprises, and also de-risking mechanisms for local financial institutions. If we are in this room because we are interested in the discussion of how we stimulate more private investment into clean energy in Asia, we really need to consider project preparation facilities as a critical part of the puzzle in the discussion. We are seeing unprecedented amounts of funding being made available for climate and clean energy investments. But despite this increased funding, the pipeline, the sufficient pipeline for these investments is simply not there. So I invite you today to join me in following a story of a project preparation facility and to show how very small injection of public funding can result in very big impacts in the market on private sector. The story begins in 2006. Next slide, please. When under the United Nations Framework for Climate Change Convention, or the UNFCCC, two initiatives were born. One was called CTCN, or the Climate Technology Center Network, and one was called Pfan, or the Private Financing Advisory Network. CTCN was placed under the UNFCCC framework and continues to be so until this day. And Pfan was placed outside of the framework to work with the private sector. What Pfan does, we are a global network of advisors that originate projects, bring them to bankability, and assist them in raising financing. In the last 17 years, we have supported about 1,300 projects. And about 250 of those have closed on financing, many of them with subsequent series of Bs and Cs, etc. What's interesting about the story and trajectory of Pfan, that it took us about 10 years until 2016 for projects to raise the first $1 billion under the support of Pfan. Then it took us 5 years until 2021 to raise the second $1 billion of financing for these projects. And then it took us 18 months until the end of 2022 to raise the third $1 billion into the projects that we support. Now, that only doesn't show just how much the markets are maturing, but also how targeted technical assistance and capacity building to projects in the frontier markets and developing markets is critical to their success. And all of this for about $35 million of public funding. $35 million of public funding have resulted in $3 billion leverage in the markets. And this is a remarkable achievement, not only for the public funders that are supporting us, but also to the advisors and the project developers that we have been supporting over the years. The value proposition of Pfan is very simple. On one side, There is an oversupply of poorly structured projects. On the other side, there is money sitting in vehicles and it's not being moved. And so Pfan provides the missing middle, whereby we prepare the projects to bankability, and then we connect them to investors and help them secure the deals. How we work is we originate projects, we assign them to advisors. All of the advisors are locally based, or 96% of our advisors are in the countries of where we operate. We operate in about 60 countries across the globe, including in Southeast Asia and South Asia and the Pacific. And we have about 200 advisors currently working with the network. And it is a proven low overhead, low cost model that we provide for our funders, which are USAID, and some other European governments, such as Norway, Sweden, etc. I've already spoken a little bit about what the service offering is of Pfan, but you can see that the basics is basically project origination, development pipeline, investment facilitation, etc. Now, what we have seen in the last 17 years is that the need for project preparation facilities is now changing to be a lot more contextualized according to the sectors, according to the political context, according to the region, according to the country of operation. So what we have done under the leadership of USAID is to structure a program, country-based program for Pakistan, which not only encompasses the traditional Pfan services, but goes upstream to look at incubator and accelerator services for early stage projects, but then also looks at downstream services to the projects, including structuring a private equity fund. Now, what we are seeing in the markets is that early stage equity is just not available. And this is not just Pfan that sees this from our conversations and in our activities to assist these projects, but it's also the World Economic Forum and the World Bank. They all see this gap in the early stage financing for clean energy projects in the markets. And so under the leadership of USAID, we are stepping in and we are creating a specialized early stage equity fund for the projects that we are developing. In the last couple of years in Pakistan, we have developed about 40 projects in various sectors of priority that have been identified in the country to operate in. And so these 40 projects now have been developed sufficiently to bankability. And now, if we do not put the first injection of private equity into these projects, they will stall or die. And so we're very grateful for this partnership with the US government to take this initiative and to create this mechanism and this instrument for the market where it's really missing. I'd like to just leave it with you with a couple of thoughts. You know, at the beginning, I have said that there is more money available in the markets than ever. But particularly for SMEs, the more you got to less and less developed countries, the more difficult it gets for them to access the funding. The principal problem lies in the mismatch between the bottom and the top. The projects are developed bottom up, and the funding is structured these days in stratospheric levels at the top level. And so I'd like to leave you with a question as to what other access modalities are you working on that will make it easier for small and medium enterprises to access the funding that's becoming available? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Eva. That is a really important point in the mismatch between the bottom and the top, and how this segues nicely into our next presenters to go deeper into what agencies like USAID or other USG organizations can do to help bridge that gap, the missing middle, as Eva referred to it. So next we have a presentation from Scott Bartos, who is the regional advisor. Yes. Sorry. Regional Energy Advisor from USAID RDMA, and Darina Mann, project lead from the National Renewable Energy Laboratory.
Thank you, Medora, and good morning, everyone. It's really a great pleasure to see again so many new friends and old friends together again here in Manila for the Asia Clean Energy Forum. So at this moment, Darina and I want to share kind of a US government perspective and introduce some of the programs and activities that we can make available to our private sector partners to again help accelerate the clean energy transition across Asia. We have about, I think, maybe 10 or so, 12 slides maybe. Just taking a kind of zooming out for just a quick moment. Of course, I think we all understand the urgency of addressing climate change, both here in Asia and around the world. Climate change and the clean energy transition are an extremely high priority for national security and foreign policy for the United States government. And this is translated across a number of the programs and the agencies that I'll introduce here this morning. Here's a great picture here of President Biden at a recent visit to Darina's office out in Colorado, the beautiful NREL campus there. And again, I think most folks in this room are familiar with the economic challenge of this transition. Eva just spoke to this challenge and how there's a disconnect between the needs and some of the financial resources that are available, and more needs to become available. And so when I see a couple of tables like this, which again indicate this need for $190 billion of new energy financing per year by 2030, it really again heightens the urgency of how do you mobilize that type of money. And I think that certainly governments alone will not get this job done, and thus the need for private sector, strong private sector engagement and investment to help us achieve this transition. So as I mentioned, climate change and clean energy are very high national security and foreign policy priorities for the US government. And this then gets translated down to different agencies and departments of our government. I wanted to introduce quickly the USAID climate strategy with two of our important high-level goals, that of reducing 6 billion metric tons of CO2 by 2030 through our activities, as well as mobilizing $150 billion in public and private finance by 2030. These, I think, are very ambitious goals. I know Steve probably thinks about these every day. I do as well. And as we work on designing our programs, such as the Southeast Asia Smart Power Program, this is top of mind. How do we contribute to these agency objectives? This is a wonderful video here. I won't take the time to share it, but hopefully these slides will be shared broadly and you can watch this on your own, but a nice video highlighting some of our work on clean energy in Southeast Asia. So I wanted to also just share a little bit of the history, USAID's history on this topic in Southeast Asia. We have over 2 decades of experience working in the energy sector and helping transition to clean energy in Southeast Asia. Here's just, again, a quick snapshot of the various programs. Some of these are bilateral activities and others are from our regional office in Bangkok, which is where I work. I might note that a couple of examples of work we've done with the private sector include working with, for example, Bgrim Power, which is a Thai company, to develop one of Vietnam's first utility scale solar farms a couple of years back. And as I think maybe Alex will speak to, we've also been working with Vietnam at a bilateral level to develop innovative policy reforms, such as a direct power purchase agreement pilot program, which would unlock private sector finance for new renewable energy projects. This again, I'll just show it quickly here, but we did do a recent study to basically highlight again, how does our work with the private sector help achieve our goals, and what are some of the lessons learned? but this is available online, and I'm sorry you can't see it, but there's a link at the bottom for this report. Now, to speak a little bit more about the Corporate Clean Energy Alliance that Madhura so graciously introduced in her remarks. This is a snapshot of the 15 companies that we're working with in Southeast Asia. And you'll see the companies we're working with at the moment include mostly buyers of power, large energy consumers who want to decarbonize their operations. But you'll also see some companies such as First Solar, which are some of the solution providers. And we think it's important for us to listen to and understand where do the barriers in the markets exist and how can we work together to overcome those barriers. And those barriers, you'll see them approached from either you're a buyer or you're a producer of energy or a technology supplier, but everyone's trying to move towards the same goal. And so this provides us a really wonderful consultation platform to help us understand where do the barriers exist, and what tools can we bring to help overcome those barriers. In USAID, we're not doing this on our own. We work as a part of a larger US government community or family. Here I just represent 4 of the families. There are other agencies we work with as well. But together with the Department of State, the Department of Energy, and USTDA, we're often working together and helping to understand where can we work to identify and overcome barriers to deploying clean energy technologies, from renewable energies, energy generation, electric vehicle deployment, energy efficiency. We're all kind of pulling in the same direction here. I think I will now hand the mic to Darina and invite her to speak in some more detail about some of that work. Thanks, Dana.
Thanks, Scott. You're much taller than I am. So I'm here to speak a little bit about the national labs and what we do in terms of our engagement and how we connect to the private sector. So just a little bit about the U.S. Department of Energy National Lab Complex. We have 17 national labs, as demonstrated in this map, across the U.S. that focus on doing research, development, and deployment of clean energy solutions. The star in the middle is my lab. I'm with the National Renewable Energy Lab in Colorado. That is where President Biden came to get his photo op with our wind turbines and our solar. And we focus a lot on fossil-free energy solutions. So we look at wind, solar, we're looking at transmission, distribution, electrical vehicles, a wide variety of topics that our 3,000 plus researchers are thinking about every single day. Why does USAID work with the national labs? Well, it's an opportunity for USAID to leverage the billions of dollars that the US has invested in that fundamental research and bringing these technologies to market. That money has already been spent. We have made a lot of progress, and being able to leverage that and get that into the field is a great opportunity. As I mentioned, just at my lab, not even all the 17, we have 3,000 plus subject matter experts who can speak to and advise on these technologies and really help projects move along and provide that kind of insight that can be hard to access otherwise. And finally, as labs, we're scientists, we're engineers, we're providing neutral advice. We're providing, this is the data, this is the research we've done, and this helps facilitate conversations government to government. So how does the lab system fit into the conversation about the private sector? I think fundamentally the labs, like NREL, we're bridging a gap. We're moving, there's all the basic science that's happening. That's very early, frontier, it's not ready for commercial market. And we're trying to bring that to the middle so that the private sector can pick up on that and come up with innovations, come up with solutions based on that maturing science that they're not going to be able to do. This kind of forward-thinking innovation can be really disruptive. It can yield really impactful results that benefit companies as well as industries in the US and abroad. That accelerated timeline for them to bring things to the market also it benefits companies, but also benefits consumers at the end of the day. We all want those lower cost electric vehicles or lower cost technologies to come on the market. And this type of research helps bring it to the market faster. So why can't industry do this? I think fundamentally, industry is investing in the short term. They're investing in short-term R&D where there's a known investment. So there's this gap beforehand where how are we going to get there? And the labs, we have the capability of taking a broader view, a wider view, kind of a more exploratory view of the kind of science and research we're doing. We can take on that early stage and bring it forward, and hopefully the private sector can use that for the next step. In our work with Scott for the Advanced Energy Partnership for Asia, I just want to share a few examples of how we're working with private sector as well as governments to move things forward. So in Vietnam, we've been doing quite a bit of work on electric vehicles and electric vehicle supply equipment. So working with VinFast on standards and protocols and starting to understand and think about things like battery circularity. We're supporting work around electric bus deployment in some of the cities. And we're also bringing a lot of the stakeholders to the same table. So we've got EVN, VinFast, Vingroup, the Ministry of Industry and Trade in Da Nang, as well as Ho Chi Minh City, and bringing them to the table to have these integrated discussions. In Thailand, we've been supporting the Department of Alternative Energy Department and Department of Alternative Energy and Development and Efficiency, so DD, on understanding the economic impacts of the EV transition. Thailand has a biofuels industry, so when we're changing to electric vehicles, there's going to be some disruption to the incumbent industry, and we want to know what is that level of economic impact, who's impacted, and to what degree. And ultimately, that gives us some information on how the industry can plan for it. And in Laos, this is a new project. We're just kind of getting this up started, but we're working again on EVs and EVSEs with the Ministry of Energy and Mines, as well as starting to engage with the private sector. So in Laos, it's Lao Tani, and having conversations about what do those standards look like around charging stations? How can we collaborate, bringing kind of our lab capabilities to bear? I also wanted to highlight this piece, which I will speak about again later, so I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but we have this ReData Explorer where we've made data available around renewable energy resources that anyone can access, including startups, including businesses, to make decisions and to plan for policy. And thinking forward, we're always thinking forward about what's next. What are some new things that we want to be working on from the lab side, from the USG side, around our collaboration with private sector? And we think there's a lot that can be done on industrial decarbonization. This is a hard to abate sector, and NREL and other labs have been doing quite a bit of research on what that looks like. What does alternative heating technologies look like? We can bring things like modeling and analysis to the forefront and working with industries on that micro and macro level analysis. As I mentioned, we have lab space, lab capabilities to do technology testing and validation on site. We also have quite a lot of computing capabilities and technical expertise that we can bring to the table. And this is for performance characterization and scale-up analysis. And we've welcomed industry to our labs to do that hand in hand with them in the past. And finally, we have systems integration emulation. And this could model the effects of high industrial electrification scenarios. So these are just some of the things that we can do on the industrial side. Some of you may have been listening quite a bit or hearing quite a bit about circular economy. We do quite a bit of research around this as well as we think about resource scarcity. How do we protect supply chains? And I think this is a really compelling and interesting next space for the private sector to be exploring. And there are a lot of potential benefits that come from that. And finally, I think as we talk about electrification, as we talk about sustainable transportation, batteries come up time and time again. And I know many countries in this region, many industries in this region are thinking about what's my supply chain? What are the critical materials? What what does battery manufacturing look like for us? And in the US, we've developed this lithium ion battery resource assessment model, or we call it Libra. And just the last 2 weeks, we've been starting to do trainings with our Southeast Asian counterparts on the possibilities of using Libra for doing that analysis here, taking it from just the US context to the international context. So we see this as another opportunity for collaboration as we move forward. I see that we're almost at time, so I'm gonna pass it back to Scott to close out. Thank you.
Thanks, Darina. Thanks, Darina. And I should mention this, just the few slides that Darina just shared, just constantly reminds me of what a pleasure and an exciting part of my job that I get to work closely with Darina and the entire NREL team. They really bring such tremendous expertise and resources to tackle these challenges. So just in closing, sorry. Yeah, so just a couple of remarks in closing. Again, Darina pointed to one of the real priorities that we've identified with our private sector partners through the Corporate Clean Energy Alliance. I forgot to mention them in the earlier slide, but those top priorities that we hear from our partner companies are how to more rapidly deploy on-site renewable energy generation, such as solar rooftops, or possibly wind. Number two, how to access more renewable energy over the grid. And then number three, Darina spoke to it, which is how to decarbonize heat and the thermal needs of industrial applications in Southeast Asia. So again, these are our three kind of technical priorities that we continue to work on. So just in closing, again, I just want to highlight, I've already made the point that I think working with the private sector to one, kind of harmonize our messaging, making sure we understand where some of the key challenges are and working together to identify and deploy those solutions is critical if we're going to tackle this challenge in a timely way. And again, there's a number of different things underway through the CCEA, the Clean Energy Demand Initiative, and others. I wanted to highlight there's a new center that the Smart Power Program is preparing to launch called the Center for Competitive Energy Procurement that Madura and her team are working on. We're very excited about this. We think this will help us to deliver on one of the key needs, which is, again, how to maybe more quickly, easily access renewable energy over the grid through corporate PPAs. We're excited to launch and continue that work in that space. And then the last thing I wanted to highlight in this discussion as we hand it over to the more private sector voices is we really want to find ways to recognize and celebrate leaders and achievements in this space. And that's both on the private sector side, but also the public sector side. So I often say we're looking to cultivate a spirit of friendly competition, both amongst companies, but also amongst some of the regulators or some of the ministries of energy. Because what I see happening in the region is there's some innovative thinkers, again, both in government and in the private sector. And we want to recognize and celebrate those who are taking some risk to take on some reforms, such as Vietnam's DPPA program. When that is successful and we start to see deals under that, I look forward to finding creative ways to celebrate and recognize that type of bold leadership. So I'll stop there and again, hand it back to Madura and look forward to hearing from our panel this morning. And thank you all.
Thank you, Scott and Darina. So now we would love to hear from the private sector. So we have a wonderful panel for us today. So I'm going to introduce them one by one. First, we'll start with Christine Margallo, who is the Assistant Vice President for Business Development at Aboitiz Power. You can feel free to present your slides from there, or if you want to come to the podium. It's up to you.
Good morning, everyone. I am Chris Margallo. I am the AVP for Business Development for Renewable Energy for Aboitiz Power. Aboitiz Power is part... Closer? It's better. Okay. Aboitiz Power is part of the larger Aboitiz Group. We are in the business of generating and distributing power. The company is an active and positive contributor to a balanced and well-managed energy transition of the country. And the company has set an ambitious target of a 50-50 thermal renewable energy mix by 2030. This translates to around 3,600 megawatts of new RE capacity until 2030. This morning, I will share about the partnership of the US government and Aboitiz Renewable in advancing offshore wind development in the Philippines. Can you, sorry, I click it. Can you just go back to slide 2? Okay. So in 2022, the US Trade Development Agency, or USTDA, awarded a grant to Aboitiz Renewables for feasibility studies to develop up to 3 gigawatts of offshore wind projects in the Philippines. The grant awarded by USTDA will help Aboitiz Renewable engage industry experts to conduct technical and economic analysis and identify high potential project sites. And we hope to deploy up to 3 gigawatts of offshore wind projects. With the support of the USTDA grant, Aboitiz Renewable also partnered with Singapore-based Climb Capital to engage Rocky Mountain Institute, to conduct, can you go back a bit? Sorry. Okay. To conduct feasibility study aims to advance the existing research on offshore wind power and will include assessment of the wind resource and identification of competing development projects, among others. Aboitiz Power will be the project lead for the consortium in the pre-feasibility assessment and wind data collection phase. The goal is to unlock the offshore wind market, marshal resources to prepare the supply chain if offshore wind proceeds with the development stage. Okay. The Department of Energy and the World Bank identify, I think, 40 gigawatts of offshore wind potential in the country. But developers, and that includes Aboitiz Renewable, foresee a long development time frame and expect challenges in the early stages of offshore wind development. The developers are estimating around 8 years of development time frame for the initial offshore wind projects. If we compare it to other RE technologies, this will be equivalent to developing the dam-type hydroelectric and geothermal projects. So what are the challenges that we are seeing? From year 1 to year 4, that will include the pre-development and proof of concept. From the time the developer secured the concession from the government, in the Philippines, this is the Wind Energy Service Contract, it will take us 4 years to acquire sufficient permits and licenses in order for us to get a power purchase agreement by year 4. And as you know, without the power purchase agreement, we cannot go to the banks, right? So PPAs is equivalent to a make or break of the projects. Estimating another year from the awarding of the purchase power agreement, we will get into the final investment decision, and including a 3 years of construction period, we expect project completion by year 8. So what are the challenges that we are expecting in offshore wind development? We've identified 6 major challenges. This can be categorized into soft and hard infrastructure. Under the soft infrastructure, the main challenge that we have is technology adoption. I think there are still limited engineering expertise and there are challenges that we expect in project construction. Second major challenge is the regulatory framework. We from the private sector perspective, we need the government support through fiscal incentives in order to pursue a large capex project like offshore wind. The third major challenge is the large capital expenditure needed to develop the project. The way we are envisioning this in Aboitiz Renewable is creating a consortium where different players will be in order for the project to be de-risked. So we're envisioning different developers, maybe supply chain and finance or bank to be part of the consortium. For the hard infrastructure, I think the whole industry will agree. The challenge lies in the port and the transmission infrastructure. For the port infrastructure, I think with the new wind turbine design right now, our port infrastructure is challenged to accept all the new wind turbine designs. And that's the same for transmission infrastructure, where the existing transmission is not enough to accommodate the capacities. The last challenge will be the higher LCOE, but we think this will need a whole industry approach, and the LCOE will reduce as more projects become online. So these are the challenges that we see for offshore wind adoption. Okay, now let me go back to the USTDA grant. We've used the grant in order for us to piece together valuable pieces of information to aid our understanding of offshore wind site. We started with the World Bank study, and we've prepared internal analysis to identify high potential sites and have performed key studies. Other studies that we need to conduct in the future includes economic and financial analysis, development of financing options, regulatory review, and identification of the supply chain. Okay, I think this is my last slide after discussing the different challenges. Maybe some notes, a takeaway, where we see possible initiatives, not just by the US government, but the other governments and agencies to further assist in offshore wind development. From the 6 challenges that we've identified, we pinpointed to 3 challenges where we think the US government can further assist. The first one will be technology adoption. We think that the US government and other agencies can help in capacity building for different government agencies, project developers, supply chain, and financial institutions. For the regulatory framework, we think that the USG can support in the development of policy and regulatory framework by sharing case studies on international best practices on OSW projects. And lastly, for the large investment, we hope there could be more access to climate and other concessional finance funds or grants available to project developers. That ends my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Christine. I would like to return to the issue of challenges later during the discussion, particularly the regulatory challenges. But next, we'll hear from Thomas Owen, Project Development Officer for UGEP.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. So, yes, I'm Thomas Owen, Project Development Officer for Upgrade Energy Philippines. So, what is Upgrade Energy Philippines, or UGEP for short? So, we are mainly in the rooftop CNI space, rooftop solar CNI. And we do solar leasing and PPA, and we also do project development. And our current capacity that's operational is around 25 megawatts. And this is our current portfolio. So, like I said, we're in the CNI space. So our targets are mostly in the 1 megawatt rooftop solar. So mainly malls, big rooftop spaces that consume lots of electricity. And on the top right, you'll see we have a 13.8 megawatt rooftop solar project in JG Summit and their petrochemicals plant. And we're currently, or what I'm about to speak more in depth today, is this 43 or 45 megawatt solar farm in Zambales. Just some photos of our operational commissioned projects. And okay, I guess that's it. Thank you. Any questions? Thank you. Short and sweet. Okay, so moving on. Sorry, there's some speed bumps along the way. As in project development, as maybe project developers can relate. So we are in our final stages of our project at JG Summit. So if you would think 13.8 megawatts, 1:1, so it's 14 hectares worth of roof space in their facility. So just a quick intro of my management team. I have two with me today. Our chairman, Mr. Rufino Bumasang, who is fondly known as Bumi. He was the previous Secretary of Energy at the DOE and also head of PNOC before. And Ruth is also here today. She is our president, also works as the chair for the European Chamber of Commerce and the renewable side and energy efficiency. And my other management teams in finance, Jocelyn, and my very technical managers, Kim and Peter. Peter's from Belgium. So what I'm here to speak today is our partnership with USAID and their ESP. So it's the Energy Secure Philippines. So the aim of USAID ESP is to help renewable energy or grow renewable energy in the Philippines. And we've gladly partnered and signed with them in October last year. So specifically for the project of this 45 megawatt AC ground-mounted solar in Zambales, which is around 4 hours drive from here. So this is the RE process flow chart. So I apologize if people from the back can't see it, but it's basically the legal requirements, more regulatory from the local government units, the Department of Energy, the grid operators, and GCP, NCIP, the National Commission of Indigenous Peoples, and so on. So just, can anyone tell me how many signatures would you need before a project can be commissioned? It's around 300. So that's with the DOE, LGU, grid operators, and the applicable agencies in this list. So this is the 45 megawatt solar farm we're planning to build. So we're in the pre-development stages now. So it's about 52 hectares, and it's a forest land, but it's really a shrubland, so nothing really grows there. It's just shrubs and low-hanging trees, so it's quite ideal for us. And so it's called the Kabangan Solar Project. Kabangan is this municipality in Zambales. Um, we're also calling it Project Seahorse, if you can tell. So this is me. So as a project developer, sorry, just to give you a quick background, I used to work in credit ratings. I was at Fitch Ratings in London for about 4 years. And so I was mainly working in an office, but as a project developer here, you mostly work on the ground as well and then on the field. So I'm here today with a forester from the Environmental and Natural Resources Agency of the Philippines, because the land we're planning to build is a forest land, so it's DNR jurisdiction. And the guy in the middle is our guide because there was really no road, so he is a local with a machete, if you will, to pave the way for us. And what's marked around the tree is basically the boundaries. So that's how we determined. Sorry, I can just go forward. Oops. Sorry, can we go back a bit? A bit? Okay, yes, so just to give our, just to show you everyone our key milestones. So from April last year, we received the barangay endorsement. So it's the, let's say, the village resolution of Zambales. And then in October, we've received our service contract from the Department of Energy. And on November last year, we received our endorsement certificates from the DOE to tell local government units and non-government agencies that, you know, this is really good for the Philippines. We're trying to grow renewables here. And we received our clearance to undertake a system impact study with NGCP in December last year. So now we're talking to them. One of the challenges currently is to, I don't know if anyone knows, but it takes about 1 year or even more to start the process of doing a system impact study. So one of the challenges. And then our special land use permit got awarded in March, early this year with the DNR. Okay, so this is our president, Ruth, explaining the project to the barangay leaders, just to tell them, listen, you know, there's a solar farm that's happening in your area, and so we had to explain the benefits of a solar farm to the host community, so providing jobs, financial benefits. So everyone, this is signature 1 out of 300. So this is when we got our endorsement from the barangay saying, okay, we are convinced that this is good for us, and they understand, because before we start construction, we want to make sure that our stakeholders, the barangay, the municipality, all the related agencies are supportive, just so that there is no issues. Our president again, now presenting to the municipality. So it's just constant convincing to local government units, because we do need those documents to continue. And this is our service contract. So this was a huge relief for me once we got it, because it takes time to apply for a service contract with the DOE. You have to comply legally, financially, and technically. And then this is our endorsement with from the DOE. So this is just one of the examples. So the DOE is asking the NCIP, which is the Indigenous Groups of the Philippines, to support our project. And this is with colleagues from USAID. We're presenting to the indigenous groups just to show them that no one will be displaced. The benefits of a solar farm to them. So we have to provide a lot of knowledge on what the benefits are continuously. So just to show the lighter side, so this is with colleagues from USAID. So usually after our meetings, we meet up and we kind of look back on how the presentation went and how do we go forward. And also with USAID, so it's our second municipal presentation with them. So I think in the municipal level, you need around 3 formal presentations before they make a decision to say, okay, we'll give you our support. Okay, and this is our final deliberation with the environmental agency here to grant us our special land use permit. So before the final deliberation in the regional office, we had to do a deliberation on the provincial side and on the community side. So there are a lot of steps before we reach this point, and it's almost taken a year before we've received the permit. So that's the actual permit. Okay, so so this is an event we sponsored at the host community just to show that we're very supportive. So this was an open water race event in the host community that the municipality asked us, like, would you like to do this in partnership? Would you like to do this together? And we were more than happy to sponsor. So me constantly presenting again on what the benefits are to not just the attendees, but mainly the locals, because I think it's important to provide knowledge to the locals on the benefits and what the project is. That the project does, it's happening, and we would appreciate your support. So main benefits, as I mentioned earlier, so apart from reduced carbon footprint, so currently the host community we're planning to build a solar farm on is a fourth class municipality, and with the 45 megawatt project, it can go from a third class because there is a law here. It's called ER 1-94, where the solar farm generates, for every kilowatt hour the solar farm generates, 1 cent goes to the host community, and if you add that up, that can be quite a significant amount, and it can increase their allowance, which helps them go from a fourth class to a third class. And I think we also know that a lot of jobs will be created once a solar farm starts, especially in the construction stages, but then once it's commissioned, then in the O&M, operations and maintenance, will still need local participants to work. And yes, so without the USAID support, I think we would wait, or we would struggle as a company, because with their guidance and their assistance, mostly legally and technically, we have managed to progress. Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas. And now we have Takuya Kasai, managing partner and the head of APAC at NLX. Would appreciate if you keep it short. So we have some time for.
So I'll make it super fast, okay? So my name is Takuya Kasai. I'm head of an Asian Pacific for the NLX Advisory Services and a part of an Italian utility of NL. And today discuss presentation that actually we use an I was called for the speaker yesterday, so I used this presentations and this presentation was held in last March at global seminars, joint work with CDP and with NL. So the topic we're talking about then we are representing the off-takers and the energy buyers and in the CNI space. So I think in a good taking this opportunity, I'd like to present and what the buyer think and what they are doing, and especially in the APAC regions. So can you go next? I cut it short. So CDP, as you know, then a global environment in the non-profit working organizations and hold on one second. Hold on. Can you go back? Sorry. I have touch. Okay, so as you see, the CDP and the number of companies increase over time, especially in 2022. You see the tremendous increase, mostly from Japan. So the one of the reasons that in Japan in 2022, the large publicly traded companies had to mandate TCFD disclosures requirements. So as a result, they have a more passion toward decarbonize. So that's why they had a lot of participating in CDPs. So our roles is we're more focusing on the scope 3 and the supply chain side. As you see, the global companies and the consumptions, GHG consumption, if you see, is much smaller than the supply chain side and about 12 times higher. So this is something we're focusing on right now. This is a CDP presentation. So these are not entirely our client, but just for reference, and all the global companies are focusing on the scope 3 work right now. So as you see, then your presentation also covered then climate change, right? We don't really have a time, so we're very passionate to do the decarbonize and in not only the North America and Europe, but also the Asian Pacific. There's a lot of global companies and based on the North American, European companies, they had already completed the decarbonize in their own home countries, but many in their operation are in Asian Pacific, and they're still working on that. Still have a challenge, a big challenge facing in Asia Pacific. So that's something that we help them to decarbonize in Asia Pacific. So we are the part of it now. Then, as you see, then we are the one of the largest utility companies, and I lead the advisory function for CNI functions. So I represent then CNI off-takers and energy buyers to procure all the needs across APAC. So I'm based in Tokyo right now because a lot of the decision making is held in Tokyo. As a matter of fact, and a lot of the Japanese company, as you see, then is held in Southeast Asia. So we normally sign a global contract and to procure all the across APAC. So that's something that we're working on. So we call it net zero advisory services, but in North America, more carbon neutral advisory services. So we have a number of services available, and yes, and we do the PPA procurement, and also the EAC Global Purchasing Center we have, and so we look after the entire EAC procurement for them. And I also the market intelligence is actually the high demand right now because a lot of company has a struggle to understand that the market and especially across the Southeast Asia. So we have Intel and also to look after the old and report and provide it to customers. Okay, so it's a part of an market intelligence covering and not only the power side, but gas, oil, and water, coal, and all in the energy needs. And it's as I said, and it's a lot of attention in Southeast Asia right now. Okay, so the CNI customers, the decarbonization goals, and it's a PDCA concept. So measure your emissions, scope 1 to 3 tracking and calculation. That's unaware or help them to do so. And also that this, especially in a plan that their strategies and a sustainability strategy, especially in the Southeast Asia. And as you see, then company by countries and it's all the regulation rules and the status are all different. So that's something that we can accommodate their needs. And also that we help them to reduce their emissions. And again, we're advising the customers. And so we work with developers and local and globally and hand in hand to do all the procurement needs. And also the reporting, and as I said, and we're the CDP global partners. We support their questionnaires and also the TCFD related service we provided. So as you see, there is a kind of one-stop channels that we provide for the CNI customers. So today I'd like to discuss about that more about the virtual PPA. So in their home countries, mostly we have them in a virtual PPA needs, and North Asia, including Japan, is very hot in the virtual PPA and setup. So but scope 3, by looking at scope 3, and we kind of providing a model is called virtual PPA aggregations. Is providing the covering for scope 3 net zero target. That's something I'd like to discuss today. It is okay. Okay. Simply understanding of virtual PPA aggregation, it's not entirely available in Southeast Asia yet, but the concept like this: renewable energy generators and sign a contract with an aggregators. For example, let's say the example in a GAFA. Okay, so such a big company, and they have an enter into the very large size scale of a virtual PPA contract with them. Then not only the consumption for the single companies, but also the covering an entire their supply chains. So the concept. So the thing is that then a lot of companies and already has an securing their scope 2 target, and for example, but still only halfway through in a scope 3 target, right? So yeah, can you make a slide? Yeah. So I just want to explain that how that works in a one-to-one virtual PPA. That's it's must we're working on in the Japan market right now, especially and some in Southeast Asia. Can you go next? You need to click. Yeah, this is a concept on a virtual PPAs. Can you go next? So a customer signed a virtual PPA with a renewable energy generator, as they're here today, right? So for wind power, for example, at the fixed rate, term is typically 10 to 15 years, but that's in a more North America, Europe, but in Asian Pacific, mostly the 20-year range. Energy, hold on, can you go back? Yeah. Renewable energy generator sell the customer now power into wholesale market and receive a market price. Renewable energy generator send and receive settlement from a customer. So the contract has a settlement pricing in it, so mechanism in it. So the number 4, and a customer counterbalance and utility payment for power with settlement transfer and the user rec to reduce in scope 2 emissions. For example, since in the Japan market, is a lot of transaction happening right now. In Japan, 9 area, so segregate, so 9 market available. So it depends on the location of the asset. And so they can hedge on that price. So then customer has, let's say the 20 years for the next 20 years and a fixed, they can receive power at the fixed rate and also receive environmental attribute, which so they can aim change for 2 rabbit and to get a fixed price and also the energy attribute. Can you go next? So that's a typical virtual PPA happening in Asian Pacific market. But next, can you go next? Next, a virtual PPA aggregation model. This is a bit different. So can you go next? Probably click in a couple times. The concept is similar, but the thing is, this covering scope 3 emission too. So can you go next? You need to click in a full file. Can you go more, please? Yes, please. Yeah. It's a similar. Can you go more? One more? 2. One more. Thank you. Yeah, stop it, please. So this concept, you see it on right-hand side, host organizations, and sign a contract with generators and a large-scale contract, and covering all the scope 2, 3 emissions. So environmental to transfer to the supply D or supplier C or E, and depends on the term and the conditions. So so that's also the a lot of large scale customers has urgent needs to meet their target, ambitious target in 2030, 2035, 2040, whichever. So in order to do so, this is the way to go there, especially in happening in more North America and also Europe. And we're working on the virtual PPA in Japan and North Asia side and some in Southeast Asia right now. But the challenge, as you know, the regulation rules in each country. So sometimes we work with the government or the local government to discuss about this, and thinking go next. So the virtual PPA aggregation model. So now we help, and we as an advisory service help to engage in all the customer needs. So supplier engagement is key. So that's something we accommodate. So again, a virtual PPA model happening in Asia, but virtual PPA aggregation model still we still are working on it because of the rule and regulation, especially in the transfer for the energy environmental attribute, environment resale certificate, and that's still we have some challenge. So that's something we're working on. So can you go next if you don't mind? So the typical case in Asia Pacific, we work with the large scales and real estate and logistics companies to procure all the PPA needs, and then the retail side and covering the tenants and emission as well. So as you know, we're a detailing company, so normally we have a lot of European customers. Let's say then a luxury brand, they have a lot of the retail then across APAC, but the consumption is so low. So at the time, we normally work with a real estate company to procure all the PPA needs for them, and then that's covering the tenants and consumption as well. So to meet their target. And another example, the global apparel retail, and as you see, then Asian Pacific, and I call it this is a scope 3 of the award. So there's a lot of manufacturing here across APAC. So it's covering an apparel industry, especially. That's something we're working on. So yes, it's a lot of PPA. It depends on the country, and on-site is mostly available, but off-site some are challenge. So depends on the countries, and near-site available some, I just want to point out one thing. And one of the apparel companies is seriously considering not only the PPA, but then acquiring their own generations renewable space, and to cover creating their ecosystem. So that's something keep in mind. So even the setting up their own grid. So as you know, the challenge and people the developer facing is the grid availability across APAC. So that's something yeah, I'd like to stress out. So that's CNI customer has an ambitious target. So to meet the goal, yes, and they need to they're trying to find a solution across APAC. So that's the time we got engaged, and we work on some critical analysis in each countries to see what we can do. And right now, in 5 years, 10 years, and it's a medium term, all right? So medium long-term plans, and we develop for them. Thank you. Go next. Yeah, it's all. Yeah, thank you. So again, and we help them to do that their decarbonization needs. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, Tak. And I want to quickly introduce our last member of the panel, Alex Pereira, Deputy Director of Energy at WRI. I want to give you the opportunity to talk a little bit about WRI and CEIA quickly, please. Thank you.
Brevity is the most important thing here, I think. So Alex Pereira, I'm the Deputy Director of WRI's Global Energy Program, and I lead our corporate energy partnerships. And I was asked to talk a little bit about the Clean Energy Investment Accelerator. This is a Department of State supported development assistance program. And this program was launched back in 2016. So I don't know if you even remember what version of the iPhone you had back in 2016, but this has been going on for about 6 years. And look, the problem we're trying to solve, and this was where WRI, the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, and a company called Alitro Partners came together, and we said, it was a smoky actually it wasn't smoky because you can't smoke anymore in bars, but it was in a back room in a restaurant. We said, geez, companies really are struggling outside of the US. In the US and in Europe, they've got opportunities to buy renewables. Outside the US, where their supply chains are growing, the CDP chart, they have less solutions to buy renewables. So how do we get working groups at the country level to really solve those problems, improve the transactions at the country level? So that's what CEIA set out to do. I'm just going to show like a couple snapshots of what we were able to do with this network of companies working to really prove the solutions, build the ecosystem of actors that can respond to corporate demand, and also inform policies, because at the end of the day, you've got to get the policy structure right. So we worked with over 600 companies. across CEIA countries, which includes Philippines, Vietnam, Indonesia, Mexico, and Colombia at one point for a while, but mostly most of the investment was in Southeast Asia. And this was a $5 million grant from Department of State. And we, working with these companies, we actually helped identify and mobilize about $55 million in clean energy projects. That's over 100 megawatts of renewable energy projects. So in terms of return on investment, not bad, right? And then the companies that we work with have actually identified an additional $2 billion worth of demand for clean energy that they want to implement. So that's an additional pipeline. So I don't know, developers, that's a big opportunity for you all, 2 billion. And I'm really happy, Eva, that you mentioned that you have your 2 billion ready to go from REAP. So this is great. I mean, our numbers match up perfectly. And then the CEIA companies have actually supported improvement of 23 policies. So actually getting the policy environment right, getting the private sector input into decision-making to strengthen policies so that these models that companies are trying to adopt can scale and be implemented quicker and hopefully get less than 300 signatures needed. So look, I'm not going to talk about the challenges. Everybody loves to talk about challenges. I'm an opportunities person. Like, I think we have answers to every challenge that you raise. You can throw a challenge at and we'll say, well, this is how we can fix it. But the big opportunities that the CEIA has found, I mean, first of all, solar, rooftop solar avoids the problems of land use impacts, can be really cost efficient. And actually we're seeing models where it's saving companies, 30% on their electricity bill right away. So if you're a company, how many companies do we have in the room? Any? We've got one. Okay, two. I hope you guys are looking at rooftop solar because, it's sort of dismissed as well. It's not scalable, but actually you can really save money, and avoiding the land use impacts is really important, and using your roofs more efficiently is great. CEIA has developed resources, guidelines, template RFPs, all these solutions to help you evaluate these projects much quicker. So you can look at our website, cleanenergyinvest.org. We agree with the need for thermal solutions. Happy to work with Clean Energy Alliance on that. That's a big challenge and an opportunity. Lastly, look, policy is really important. And so we talked about the Vietnam DPPA program, Direct Power Purchase Agreement pilot, and the CEIA and the Vietnam, the VLEAP team, which is a USAID supported initiative, have been collaborating very closely to get insights from CEIA companies into the convening that VLEAP is doing with the government to make sure that policy is designed in the most effective way to be most attractive to companies. We're really excited. Hopefully that policy that gets moved forward. Scott, you and I started working on that in 2017. So it's not the speediest policy, but we hope it's going to be a big outcome. Our Indonesia team has been working with the utility with PLN to get green tariffs made available and renewable energy certificate purchasing available, again, allowing companies to buy the kind of scale that they need for their operations. And then our team in the Philippines has been working on the Green Energy Options Program, which is another really interesting potential program to help the companies achieve the scale that they need. One other opportunity I'm just going to preview, there's a panel tomorrow. We're talking about regional grid integration. We recognize, I mean, everywhere, the build out that's going to be needed for a renewable energy future is going to require massive investments in grid infrastructure. We recognize that it's a big challenge and it's an opportunity for investment and to get this right. And just previewing tomorrow, there is a discussion about a coalition called the Asia Clean Energy Coalition and their recommendations for a regional grid. So I think that's a really important discussion as well. So look, I'm going to end it there. I'm really optimistic about everybody up here on the panel and the resources that we can bring together to make this happen. My kid, my daughter who's 13, doesn't really talk to me that often because she's a teenager, but she did say, Dad, how do you stay optimistic about solving this problem? And I'm like, look, when I go to these conferences and I meet the number of people, the enthusiasm, the kinds of resources that we can bring to bear on this, I think we can solve any challenge ahead of us. So I'll leave you all with that.
Thank you. Thank you, Alex. I know you said you don't want to talk about challenges, but let's talk a little bit about challenges. I wanted to come back to the challenges that were mentioned by Christine and also by Tom about we know regulatory barriers are one of the biggest challenges, especially in this region. Having to get the 300 signatures or maybe even for developing wind power, perhaps more for onshore than offshore wind. There's coordination needed with ministries other than the Ministry of Energy or departments of energy, with road building and everything. I want to hear from you and also the other panelists if you want to chime in on what do you think we can do about those barriers and what agencies like USAID or USTDA or other development partners can help overcome those barriers.
Right. So we at REAP, we specialize in creating task forces that go together with the development partners, including USAID and other development partners, together with the local governments, and help them understand the challenges that small and medium enterprises are facing, and then identifying typical issues that can be solved by bringing various agencies together. And then on the other side, also working with data. So we see the power of opening data in being able to stimulate business models and business ideas, and then create the solutions that the private sector sees. And so we are working on the other side of also with those local agencies to opening data, making it accessible to governments and business entities in the local countries. And, typical example of this was the GPS data that was opened up, 15, 17 years ago, and how much this has opened up to business ever since. So this is really, really important that we continue to do that, and developing countries need assistance with that as well.
Anybody else?
Thank you very much. As I said, I'm representing off-takers and energy buyers, and we engage in a global contract, especially in APAC, multi-countries. But the thing is, a tremendous needs we have, because our customers normally engage in within over terawatt hours, but for the renewables. But the thing is, it depends on the countries, and they don't really have an option right now. So need to accelerate that and a development process. That's something we cannot do because we're, but the thing is that we can bring in on the table and the opportunity. So I hope we can speed up the process, and especially in the development.
Maybe I'll take this also. I think what USAID or other government can provide is, I think these issues is gigantus. And what these agencies can provide is a venue similar to this one, where all of the industry players can discuss both the challenges, the opportunities, and identifying specific action points to address those issues. I think that one can be a way for the US government and USAID can help.
I'd like to add as well. So one of the challenges based on the 300 signatures is, I think, if the USAID and the DOE or other agencies would coordinate or give policy regulatory recommendations, it would expedite the process for developers, because it is currently not streamlined. So coming from experience, when you need a certain permit, it has to go through another agency. But if we streamline that, or or if multiple developers give this recommendation, then maybe these agencies can take action and help basically streamline the process. So
just one more point for USAID. I think, you know, this question of how do you create cross-country transactions and cross-border transactions and making sure that data is consistent across different markets, and what's the role that USAID could do to harmonize the kind of data that energy markets are providing, the utilities are providing across the region to allow some of that more regional, you know, transactions as we certainly think about, you know, new grid build out and infrastructure.
Thank you. Yeah, so on the issue of regulation, Tak had mentioned that the DPPAs, a lot of the PPA models are not achievable in this region right now because of the regulatory support is not there. I'm wondering if you could comment, all of you could comment on what you think the private sector's role is in coalitions like RE100 or other buyers associations. Do you think they can play a more proactive role in leveraging their market power and advocating for policy changes? What opportunities do you think are there, and how can the USG support that?
Sure. Yeah. I think the private sector plays a really important role, and it's why, you know, WRI, you know, we work with, you know, USAID and others to mobilize the private sector, because governments listen to the private sector more than they listen certainly to NGOs. So I think the voice of the private sector is very powerful in elevating the need, the priority for good policy in the region. Companies oftentimes struggle to do this individually because they've got a list of priorities that they're talking to governments about. So the more, you know, WRI and USAID and other partners can mobilize the private sector to kind of coordinate that voice and really elevate this as a priority. I mean, this is, you know, companies are facing 2030 targets, right, for their supply chain. 2030 is actually really not as far away as we think. I mean, they're under a lot of pressure to do something. So really mobilize, making sure that the governments are hearing that this is a critical need is very important. So yes, the voice is very powerful. So let's make sure we're taking advantage of that momentum and the voice of the private sector.
Thanks. Publicly funded project preparation facilities such as Pfan sit on an enormous amount of knowledge across the sectors. You know, we work with solar, biomass, wind, e-mobility, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And you can aggregate that knowledge and pass on the common challenges that these projects have and these companies are encountering, and package that to not only the local governments, but also to the development partners and US government. So I would be really encouraging this exchange of knowledge and the dialogue and being able to pass that information that sits with the private sector and the aggregators of the knowledge in the private sector. Thank you.
I think, as I mentioned earlier, if a lot of developers or even USAID or other agencies provide policy recommendations that will expedite the process of a renewable energy project, then I believe the DOE will listen as well. So we're very fortunate. I'm very happy that our current Secretary of Energy, Lotelia, is doing a lot of progress. So he has goals of renewables, 35% of the energy mix by 2030, and then 50% by 2040. So that is a big achievement, and he has done a lot to help RE, and also to invite foreign owners to come in and help grow RE in the country. So I believe, like it was mentioned, now is a good time. There is a good momentum. So if there is policy recommendations that a lot of developers can provide, then I think collectively we should be able to project that, and hopefully they will listen. So
I think I'll take a different crack on this one. You mentioned about the PPA, but I think so we have both the government tariffs and the corporate PPAs available. But there's another avenue actually that will be the wholesale electricity markets. But I think this is coming from my experience from the bank. I used to be part of a commercial bank, and there's a mismatch between the industry is going into the direction of shorter PPAs, right? We're actually encouraging short-term contracts, lower megawatts, but the bank is still in the. I think there's still getting comfort in having a long-term PPA and also covering the debt service their debt service coverage or ratio. So I think what we can look at is maybe bridging that gap between what the industry what is happening in the industry, which is going to shorter PPAs and shorter capacities, and the bank's concern of ensuring that there are guaranteed debt payments.
Yeah, I totally agree. The voice of private sector is so powerful, and let them to do and focus on what they can do. And I think in public sectors, and I like them to focus on the more and availability of grid and transmissions. I think that's a common issues across in APAC. And so to moving to the renewables, so that's something in the private sector cannot do. So I think that's a tremendous opportunity to invest in that sections. And
your break. Maybe we can take one question from the audience if there are any. Any? None? Okay. Oh, okay. Oh, right. Okay, great. Okay, this question is for Eva. How does REAP collaborate with SME in regions like Indonesia for RE project implementation? And how does REAP prioritize the project to select for the funding?
Thanks. So number of opportunities here. Number one, through the private financing advisory network, we have continued open calls for projects where we take projects into our pipeline to support, to develop to bankability, and then support them in matching with investors and support them through the deal facilitation. So that's opportunity number one. We are pretty technology agnostic. What we're looking for is maturity of the business model and how far the project is in being able to secure that financing. And number two, REAP is currently in the process of launching a call for projects for productive use of renewable energy in agricultural value chain. So we're passionate about doing our bids to secure the food system. So if you have any opportunities, including Indonesia, for productive use in agri-food value chains, then we're very happy to receive the application. Thank you.
One very last question. This is for Tom. For the UGEP work, what have you found to be the biggest challenges and barriers when convincing local communities and government counterparts on the value of solar?
hello. So I think the main challenges is education. Like this area where we're working on, it's going to be their first project. So we've had questions from the local governments, you know, the solar farm, cost radiation, is there any emittance? What's going to happen once the project is done? Are you just gonna kick indigenous people out and all that? So there is a lot of good questions, but of course it's that education that you have to provide, because not everyone is familiar with solar energy. I think challenges also is the due process. I think for local government units, like I mentioned, as you saw, I've been there a bunch of times, and it's just it takes time as well. So to set up a meeting, even with DOE's endorsement, it's still up to the local governments to decide when they're available. So yeah, I think education mainly, but also following the due process. So hopefully there are ways we can expedite that.
Thank you. We're out of time. So I'd like to thank our panel speakers once again. Thank you so much, especially for those who stepped in at the last minute. We appreciate your time. And thank you to all of you, our listeners. Thank you.
Can you hear me? Yeah. I've learned from experience that hangry faces are not very good faces. And so at 12:30 is when I will start looking at the hall here, and I want to make sure that we don't keep you beyond what is very necessary. So my name is Vinod Srivastava. I am very privileged to be involved with a program of USAID. It's a flagship program. It's a regional program, and it looks at something very personal to me. I come from a family of 5. My 2 younger sisters, who both studied up to the PhD level in physics and were physics professors. A long history where my parents had to deal with the dowry situation versus the level of education. And if you were a non-STEM, it was a very large dowry. But if you went to STEM as a woman, the dowry doubled. And despite that, my father insisted. They both did their PhDs in physics. So I was actually exposed to gender equality at the very beginning as a child. And that's a personal story why I'm so privileged to be part of this program. Let me take you very quickly through the journey, and I will try to do my best with the slides. It moves very rapidly for some reason. Wow. Please pardon me. I don't know what's going on here. I've tried to point here, which is a mistake. All right. So we have 90 minutes to do our program, and we'll try to be as judicious and as punctual as possible. I have a very wonderful set of speakers. I'm also very privileged because I'm amongst the company of very distinguished leaders that come from different parts of their life and will share their experiences with us. I will be introducing each of the speakers as we go along. So please bear with me, and let me now share with you a little bit about the overall program. And I always look at here, I was a professor for 15 years, so that's my habit. And it's very difficult to change habits. I think that we all agree that we're now in a climate where energy sector is transitioning and changing, and it is changing very rapidly. It must change, it needs to change, whether we like it or not. And so therefore, the best thing for us to do is to prepare how we prepare ourselves in both guiding the sector change as well as adapting to. And the transition that is taking place requires all of us to work together, because no one segment of the society is going to be untouched by the transition process. The transition will affect everyone. The basic challenge is in India, in Asia, is the following, which we find in other regions as well. we have not really learned until recently, how do you really deal with the nexus of energy sector governance and the role of women? And as we were learning about this, something else happened. And we realized that, look, we need to transition the sector because we cannot continue to live in this planet with a fossil dominated sector. So all of a sudden, the nexus, which was gender and energy, changed to gender, energy, climate, and transition. And this is where I think the challenge comes in. This is also where the fun is. And my background is in science, but also in business and management. I think what I'm going to take you through today is the art side of, rather than the science. We've heard a lot from other speakers and so on the technologies, on the role the technologies play. Lovely knowledge from Sadie we heard from your session, which was delightful. Thank you very much. So I'm going to talk a little bit more on the art side of it. Our speakers will talk a little bit about the art side. And yes, okay. So there is a lot we heard here about the need for capacity building and training. What does that mean? That means I'm used to doing something in this manner. Why do I need capacity building? Because what I'm doing or have been doing is not working. I need to do something different in a different way. And I need to learn how to do that. And that's the basic need for all of us, in whether we're academia, business, government, donors, or the broader civil society. So here is all of us that we have to play a role. Now, when I take all of this and see what is going to happen in this sector, this is something we're missing a little bit. I need to say that. If you look at the old energy sector, which we're still plagued by to some extent, what did we see? Large central station, 1,000 megawatts electric power plants. In some cases, if you go to South Africa, Eskom, you see 3 units of 1,000 megawatts each. Big, that's what we saw. Big refineries, big terminals, big gas plants and big power plants and so on. Where are we going now? We're going into a renewable energy-based sector. In other words, the relevance of somebody who produces 50 kilowatt is just as much to the society and economy as someone who may produce a solar utility scale 300 megawatt project. Meaning, our opportunities for involvement at every level. All of a sudden, marginalized communities, small businesses, they all have a role to play now, which was not the case in a central station. You had to have big bucks to play the energy role. And we don't have big bucks. We have now lots of very creative people, and we have to now retool ourselves. So the message basically is in the bottom here. How do we really start a journey towards this goal? A just and gender equitable transition. And everyone has to play a role, and our speakers actually represent this segment of the society that have to play the role. This is just to share with you that basically what we're learning is that ESG and gender inclusion are becoming now common themes in governments, ministries, in corporate sector, where we work a lot with the corporations and so on. And while there is a lot of basis and a lot of research done and so on, that there is a real value. Everybody quotes the study done by McKinsey that if you have a gender equitable program, I have seen that study, like any study or any research, it has strong points, but it also has data vulnerabilities. More work needs to be done. We in our own work have found that, in Asia, I was told one time by Prapad Pramani, who used to be the Secretary General of Ministry of Energy and Science and Technology in Thailand. He said, Vinod, I gave a fantastic presentation. I thought I was doing such a great job. And he got up and he said, thank you, Vinod, great job. But let me tell you something. You can give it this presentation 10 times. And I'll 10 times say what a great job you've done. But I'm not going to implement what you're saying until my neighbor does his part. And if that works for the neighbor, it's going to work for me. So, you learn a lot as you go along in this. And I think this is to some extent what we're seeing with respect to gender inclusive approach to governing the sector. We have to repeatedly give the same message over and over and over again. When you find one person doing it and it is working, you see suddenly other people. Is to find that one entity that's going to take the risk and take the lead. And we have found some. Am I doing this? Yeah. So let me just share with you very quickly a program that we are very privileged to be part of. Our mission director is sitting here, Steve Olive. Steve, thank you for giving us this opportunity. The program that we are working in is USAID RDMA program, and this is really a flagship program because it is a regional program. Right now, we are working with 5 countries in the region. The basic tenet of the program is what USAID and other donors and governments and private sector in partnership can do. What can they do in partnership that will enhance the opportunities for women to both enter and then prosper in the sector? Entry alone is not enough, as we'll share with you in a minute. I think Sadie can help us with this sometime with your technology a little bit. Quick fact sheet about our program. $9.1 million. It started in 2020. Overall goal, as you can see, is to enhance the role of women, both in entry as well as retention in the corporate sector, and prepare the workforce for the future. In other words, we really need to find all the tools that we have and use those tools to create new workers, new managers, new executives, and new leaders in a gender inclusive manner. And the reason again is that I know from experience in my own company, and I was the founder of Core International in 1984, long time ago, and I can tell you every time we had more women working in the company, all the men behaved better and their productivity was higher. Absolutely. Somehow there is something that the women do, women colleagues, that they make you behave better and make you produce more. So there is this evidence, anecdotal and intuitive, but now we're finding data-driven. We're finding that there is data that support that because you can measure the productivity, you can see the results. The countries that we are working in right now are Indonesia, Laos, Philippines, Thailand, and Vietnam. I'll talk to you a little bit about some programs. How does this work? The last item is very important. Energy companies, universities, donors, USAID missions, ministries, governments, regulators, all must. It's like a symphony. You can have a fantastic symphony. I mean, Zubin Mehta once told me that, here is the problem. If I have one bad violinist, I don't have a symphony. So people have to work in concert, and it has to sound like music as opposed to noise. And that's the challenge. You watching, Sadie? You know the trick here? Okay, there are 5 different objectives, all actually addressing one goal. The goal is how do we increase the total supply and entry of young girls and women into the energy sector? And then 2, how do we make sure that they stay there? And we've done some studies and so on, and I think all of you know about this. There is a very high incidence of dropout. That means those women who do end up in the energy companies, 2nd and 3rd year, more than half of them, almost 70% of them in the region drop out. So something is wrong. The companies are not doing, and then you talk to the corporate executives and they tell you, we have the same salary, we're giving them same benefits. Why are women quitting? And I said, yeah, that's a great question. Why are they quitting? There's something we're not doing in terms of creating the right work environment. Paycheck is very important, but happiness and feeling good about yourself in terms of what you're doing outweighs any paycheck in the end. I'm going to keep trying this. This slide is our treasure. When we began our program, that was in 2020, we realized very quickly at that point that there's no way any single entity, a single donor or a single company or a single university achieve what we really, really need. They all have to work into cause. So as you can see here, there are 2 sets of partners. We looked at the supply side. The supply sides are universities, tertiary educational institutions that must prepare young girls and women, both STEM and non-STEM, which means the supply side. That is represented by the bottom. We signed actual letters of commitment with 9 universities in the region. for us to work with any one of those collaboration activities on the right. On the top, you say the 7 companies. Now that happened 2 years ago. We had signed agreements with 7 companies in the region, in Thailand, Indonesia. As you can see, some of the very, BGRIM was mentioned earlier. We are now working with BGRIM in Thailand, but also with 2 BGRIM companies in Vietnam. And they were connected to us by the Asian Development Bank, which is now an interesting partnership with ADB, USAID, RDMA, BGRIM, and the universities that BGRIM is accepting the students from. That's what is needed, the people working together. So this is our treasure. Without this, we cannot do anything. I think that I'm going to move forward here a little bit, just mention one program that we have done, which is the regional internship program in the region. As of last week, we have placed 40 interns from 11 universities with 12 energy employers and 5 countries. And so this is truly a regional program. We began with 7 companies that I showed you earlier. 4 more companies joined us. They heard about the program, say, hey, can we work with you? But that's what you want. It doesn't matter what I say about the program, it's what others are saying. So this program, Steve, I'm happy to report to you, is really having attraction. We have now so much demand. I think if you have money, I can place 200 interns tomorrow. Yeah, there's a lot of them. All right, these are our contacts. Lois Varick is the acting chief of party. She's in the audience. As I introduce her very fondly and very proudly, both as my CEO in my company and also my CEO at home. But I have to only please one person, 2 CEOs. And then Pra, who is our deputy chief of party, she's also in the audience. She's based in Bangkok. Our project officer is Rasheen Salangarm, who is sitting right here on the right corner of the first. Great team we have that we're working with. And I'm going to stop here at this point. And then we'll have some questions and so on later on. And at this point, I think it's time now for us to hear from the experts. So let me introduce our first speaker. Our first speaker represents to us the corporate sector. She comes from the First Philippine Holdings Corporation as the Chief Sustainability Officer. And First Philippines Holding is the parent company of First Gen in the Philippines, who is our signed partner for 2 years. And we've been working with them very, very wonderfully. In fact, they are going to be doing a training for 300 some people in their company on unconscious bias that prevails at every level in the organization. So we're delighted to introduce you, and being the Chief Sustainability Officer, you obviously have a lot on your plate. So Agnes, this is the trick.
Good morning, everyone. For an orderly energy transition, we need to prepare for the future workforce. But in doing so, we need to make sure that our organization is gender inclusive so that we can reap the benefits for our business and for other stakeholders. So in the next 10 minutes, I will discuss our current efforts towards a gender inclusive organization, what we can do, and what we expect to be the issues during this transition. So first, a profile of our company for context. First Gen Corporation, our mission is climate-centric, to forge collaborative pathways to a decarbonized and regenerative future. And therefore, to execute that mission, our business strategy is to generate only low-carbon energy so that we can reduce the carbon intensity of the grid or the country. Our power supply, we have 3,500 megawatts. We supply 19% of the country's power needs, and we reduce the intensity of our grid by 20% every year through our offerings of natural gas and all the types of renewable energy. We will continue that clean path by developing 9,000 megawatts by 2030, which is 30% of the country's target for renewable energy. So when we started this journey 4 years ago, when we issued our gender equality policy, and then 2 years ago when USAID joined us, we had these targets. First, we know that the energy sector is a complex sector, and therefore we will need the complementation of male and female talents. We know, but with talented individuals, we can create innovative teams that will address all the disruptions of our sector. And innovative teams will lead to a resilient organization that will continue to create value for our company and for others or other stakeholders. So what are the modest things that we're doing right now? We're starting with embedding gender in our policies so that, and we have around 16 social safeguards, but I think the most important is the human rights policy and the gender equality and diversity policy. We also do gender-related trainings. We do gender-neutral recruitment. We are coaching women to be leaders in our company. Our performance appraisal is target-based and not gender-based. And of course, we nurture a culture in the workplace that will be safe for women. And we continue to improve on our gender performance, both in the procurement and in the community engagement. But I think the most important project of our company is what's happening now. We're reviewing all our leaders to make sure that they have the right competencies, which includes gender skills. So what are the results of our action? In the workplace, we have around 43% women in the workforce. Almost 40% of them are in the management position, but we do have a low women in the technical space, which is still around 15%. So we need more of Rexy Abad. Rexy Abad is an electrical engineer who now heads our 150 megawatts Burgos and solar project in Ilocos Norte. In our host communities, we have 21% of our 108 organized communities are women leaders. 30% of the fund goes direct to women groups. And in our scholarship program, around 60% are female scholars. But we need to do more. So there are a lot of work opportunities for women, an immense opportunity, but where will they come from in a clean energy space? In the clean energy future, which will expand by 12 times by 2050, there are a lot of opportunities for them. But we need to understand what kind of clean energy system are we going to see in the future. More and more, we're going to see diverse technologies of various sizes. There will still be centralized large plants, but there are growing localized systems like microgrids in the communities and even individuals who are producing their own power to be prosumers and of course enabled by a stable grid. But beyond the clean energy system, other opportunities for women will happen in sectors like sectors that are using clean energy, in sectors that enable clean energy like research and education, and also, of course, technologies which will help us reach net carbon zero. And this kind of clean energy landscape will therefore require a diverse set of individuals or workforce. So what kind of workforce are we going to have in the future, which we need to prepare for? That kind of clean energy system will need people that are of different backgrounds, different perspectives, and even new capacities. And we know that in terms of perspectives, women bring a new perspective to their work. In this map of the Clean Energy Council, which shows that more and more as the energy becomes decentralized and household-based, there will be a need for more non-technical skills. So here we have the technical skills, the STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, and the non-STEM skills or the social skills. And we know that women are by nature, they have good social skills because of the role that they play in their family. And therefore, we believe that in terms of occupation type also, we will see that engineers, and there will be three types. There will be engineers and scientists that will need formal education. There will be technicians and trade group that will need informal or vocational technical trainings, and also community workers. But we believe that in all of this, the passion of women, their capabilities and leadership skills will actually contribute to a clean energy future for our country. So how are we preparing for a gender inclusive workforce? But first, let me share our goal. Our goal is to make sure that we create an environment that is safe and nurturing to women, but also giving them all the available opportunities and access so that they can grow in their profession and become leaders in the company. And how do we do that? First, we embed gender in all of our policies so that we can integrate gender principles across all corporate functions. We are also going to complement all the modest things that we know about gender equality through the partnership with USAID, UN Women, and PBCWE. We are going to install an embedding program for gender inclusivity, and we are going to inventory all the RE technologies. What is the ecosystem of workforce that we need? And then we will reach out to our affiliates because we do have a technical and vocational training center in Leyte, which we call KaiTech. And we do have one that's in the Visayas, and we do have one in Luzon, which is on the first college. So we will conduct social marketing because we have a very low technical workforce for women. So social marketing of STEM to women, we will deploy them as interns in our power companies and of course formulate systematic professional development plans for them. So what are the issues that we face during our transition? I think we will still be challenged in terms of transforming men to be women champions. Also, we need to have a very quick organizational shift because of the climate change catastrophe that's happening around us. Only last week we learned that the carbon budget will be exhausted in 5 years' time based on the study. Also, the demand for clean energy will be very huge because the 12 times increase in demand. So we need more women in the pipeline. And the energy system will introduce a lot of career paths for women. We need to make sure that universities are ready and their curricula are gender informed. Anyway, I think that's the last. So in closing, we believe that the shift towards clean energy must be underpinned by a just transition. And this means that we need to offer economic and social progress and equity to women, starting with the women in a workplace. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Agnes. You actually get better marks than I for the point. Only messed up once. I messed up quite a few. So we really heard something very succinct and quick, but it's a beautiful example of what a corporation at the highest level, once they make a commitment, what they can do. We began with you, our relationship 2 years ago. We are very grateful for that relationship. I think you are setting an example as a company in the region, not just in the Philippines. So thank you very much, and thank you for sharing your thoughts with us. And by the way, that dowry situation that I talked to you about, my two sisters, we didn't have to pay any dowry because my dad told these people, said, hey, we're giving you a girl who's got a PhD degree and has a job. That's a dowry. You ain't getting anything else besides that. At this point, let me bring a different perspective. We contacted Dr. Maria Teresa Fajardo. I did a lot of practicing because my name, Srivastava, has been guillotined in every possible way you can think of around the world. So when I had our speakers, I practiced all of your names, and I have on unimpeachable high authority that I am making the pronunciation fantastic. For example, when I say Agnes de Jesus, I am doing it correctly. Do you agree? So the same thing is with Dr. Maria Teresa Fajardo. We are new acquaintances. We contacted Dr. Fajardo because my own relationship with Philippines and ADB began very early, late 80s when I first came, when ADB was on Rojas Boulevard, and I did work in Thailand and Sri Lanka with ADB Energy Group. And I learned about Philippines. What I learned is that there is a very strong dynamics, a social, cultural, political dynamics that is in the Philippines. As you look at this, the makeup of the Philippines, pockets of a strong Muslim concentration in a predominantly Catholic country. And it has its own sets of challenges with respect to social, political, cultural, business, and location-wise, geographical, and so on. University of Science and Technology in Southern Philippines, which is where Dr. Fajardo is and is the community engagement. Your exact title, Dr. Fajardo, is that you're Director of Extension and Community Relations Division at the university, and also the lead officer for gender and development. And you'll talk a little bit about one of the collaborations you have with USAID that is going on. So I'm very delighted to introduce you to our audience. I think you bring a very important perspective, because if we're trying to go talk to a traditional Muslim family and say, you know what, I want your daughter to go and study chemical engineering, see how that conversation goes. So I think that what you're doing is very challenging. Please come and join the podium and share with us.
Okay, good morning, everyone. So I would like to resonate what Vinod had said. I am from the University of Science and Technology of Southern Philippines, that is located in Cagayan de Oro City and part of Northern Mindanao, a province with diverse culture, language, and religion. So my topic is the role of HCIs in promoting STEM and women inclusion to the energy sector. So let me start by saying that the outline of my topic would be in three parts. I would have the role of the university in creating a pipeline of qualified women and persons of all gender to enter and prosper in transitioning energy sector. The role of stronger partnership between educational institution and energy enterprises, and value added from mobilizing alumni association to advance the agenda and create opportunities. So basically, the Philippine HEIs, or the higher education institution, when it comes to gender and development, is guided by the CHED Memorandum Order 1 series of 2015 that requires all state universities and colleges to ensure that the programs in terms of instruction, research, extension, and production are going to be also catering to women empowerment and gender equality. So let me start by saying that basically all universities in the Philippines would like to become top performing engineering schools. Like for example, there I have some for Region 10, the Mindanao University, Mindanao State University, Iligan Institute of Technology, and my school, the former Mindanao University of Science and Technology, now called USTP. And we also have Xavier University, still in Cagayan de Oro, and a school in Davao. So what would it mean if a school is a top performing school? So it means that when they have achieved the Center of Development and Center of Excellence, for example, USTP is a Center of Development in BS Applied Mathematics, and a Center of Development for BS Electrical Engineering, and a Center of Excellence in BS Information Technology. So this would mean that the university has sustained professional development for teachers. They have upgraded the teaching and learning infrastructure and has designed well and implemented quality co-curricular and extracurricular programs for students, among others. This would also mean that the HEIs are participating in national and international accreditation processes such as Washington Accord, ISO certification for continuous quality improvement, and university rankings to attract local and foreign students. So whenever the university is working towards this recognition, they would basically be improving all the processes inside the school, and this would benefit in the long run the students and the employees. And also, since all the HEI needs to perform all core functions in instruction, research, extension, and production, then this can also include the promotion of students' participation or access to STEM. And there are implemented programs to promote science and mathematics competencies that universities can actually try to run, so that we know, for example, that, let me go back. We know, for example, that You can run a summer class for science and mathematics tutorial, for which USTP has this mathematics refresher summer course since the 1990s. So we offer refresher courses for grade 1 to the high school math and science. So in a way, we try to promote the competency and confidence in students before they enter the new school year. And this has been awarded top young accomplishment tayo awards in 2005, being able to deliver so much improvement in the mathematics competency among students in the Department of Education. And basically, we have role modeling. We can increase the number of teachers in undersubscribed courses like electrical engineering, mechanical engineering, and computer engineering, so that students can look up into these teachers as their role models, and would probably encourage more enrollment for female students. And we also engage our students in their research and thesis classes to develop educational technologies for science and math, so that they can transfer these technologies to public high schools and promote STEM in the process. And of course, the HEIs are in the best position to ensure gender sensitivity and gender participation, because they have 5% of their GAA allocated for gender and development. So they can do a lot of capacity building and awareness, so that they could increase the way the people would be doing gender mainstreaming in the university. So we also have, oh, it's moving so fast. So we have, so we have for scholarships, this is with our partnership with energy companies. So basically, they would have certain criteria for the selection, like the National Grid and Power Corporation would go for indigenous peoples, and they would go for people living in the project affected areas. But the HEI can, influence on the number of male and female who can be included into the grant. And Cagayan Electric Power and Light Company, the energy provider in Cagayan de Oro, has also that. But we could also influence on the number of male and female students to be taken into the program. So this is an example of internship. So we have students from engineering and from the College of Technology, basically in these different energy sectors or energy industry in the region. And what about mobilizing the alumni association? So okay, let me go back. This is, can you, I'm about to end and I'm like looking at the clock. Can we go back at the, okay. So let me take you back. Oh my God. So actually, we have USTP Career Center, which is funded by the USAID, USAID Stride. So it's a model career center awarded in 2021. It has student services, it has alumni services, and it has also industry relations services. So what they are going to do is that they're going to connect all the successful alumni back to the university by having the alumni talks. So these alumni would tell graduating students and incoming freshman students how it is like to work in the industry, and what soft skills and hard skills are needed to be acquired so that they can be prepared for future employment. So we also feature successful graduate. For example, Engineer Danica Takbas was a former student council president, and she was in the Women's Month to talk about how she was able to succeed in the industry that she's currently in. And she encourages women to take that kind of mindset that you can be whatever you want to be as long as you have the skills to do it. And basically, the tertiary education is a good preparation ground to prepare our students for the technical side, but also on the soft side, because you wanted the students to be resilient, to have that grit, to have that determination, And of course, we do run a good number of programs because we wanted the president down to the janitor to be gender sensitive. And for the program implementers and the proponents of different programs to always consider gender lens in whatever they do, because we believe when people in the university are towards gender mainstreaming, understood exactly what it means to have gender inclusion and gender participation, then they can do their job in the different capacities to ensure that there's equal gender participation, that all men and women can go forward and be successful because the programs, the environment, the culture are very supportive towards this. So in summary, there are so many things that higher education institute can do to support this advocacy on green energy. And it's always on making sure that the mindset of the graduates, whether male or female, is geared towards contributing productively to the environment and to the society in general. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maria. And I should stress, if you recall, I shared with you earlier a slide which was a treasure of the enhancing equality for energy activity that we're working on. USTP has been one of our original partners. We're delighted, just like you at First Gen, to have this relationship over 2 years now, which is really bearing fruits. Thank you very much. You made a very interesting point, and among many, and that was how do we use the alumni associations to really become partners with us as a value added. I am an alumni of Wharton Business School, and I can tell you that there's probably about 60,000 of us connected worldwide. And often, you don't hear from people and so on, and suddenly you get 50 emails or 60 emails. This is a group that is very incestuous in many ways. So I think we should learn how to really use our alumni who run businesses, who go out and become secretary generals and ministers and so on. I think they can provide a big value added to us. I think all of you or most of you saw our next speaker, Sadie Cox. I think some of you may not have understood some of the words she used because those were high technology words. But Sandy gave a fantastic keynote speech, and thank you, and I enjoyed it. I'm privileged to have background in physics and both business and so on. Sandy is the director of the Strategic International Partnerships at National Renewable Energy Laboratory, part of the DOE labs. The key word there, to my mind, which is Beethoven, is partnerships. So what you heard from Sandy in the keynote speech was the technology side of the partnership. And what we agreed, we did a private deal that today in this one, she'll share the people side, the partnership people side. So it's my pleasure to invite you and to learn.
Okay, I'm glad I didn't have to use this clicker yesterday because I'm pretty nervous about how this is going to work. So yeah, just on the topic of partnerships, I actually was really enjoying the presentations, and I'm already thinking about some partnerships that we can cultivate and talk about during the coffee break. So I've introduced myself a few times already, but I'm Sadie. I'm from the National Renewable Energy Laboratory. I was so fortunate to be a part of a team at NREL that designed a really impactful program that's called Women in Power System Transformation. It's supported by the USAID Gender Division at the global level, and it's a collaboration with the Global Power System Transformation Consortium, or the GPST, which is focused on enabling high levels of renewable energy integration with grids around the world, using advanced operational engineering solutions in partnership with leading system operators and utilities. Okay, first try. Okay, yeah. Oh, sure, yeah, absolutely. Okay. So I just want to start with a bit of context on why USAID, NREL, and the GPST are working together to support gender-focused action in the power sector. So as noted on this slide, women are significantly underrepresented in the power sector and specifically within utilities and system operators, which have a really critical role in advancing power system transformation. And within utilities and system operators, women are also more likely to occupy support roles than strategic management and leadership positions. So as countries around the world raise their ambitions to transform their power systems by bringing significantly larger shares of renewables and complementary technologies onto the grid, there's a risk that women and all of the skills that they bring to bear could potentially be left behind within this clean energy transition. So through this program, Women in Power System Transformation, we know that women leaders and decision makers are essential to achieving successful, inclusive, and equitable clean energy transitions. Okay. I think I'll just do that each time and see if that works. Okay, so sorry, my next slide here. Okay, so with all that context in mind, Women in Power System Transformation is focused on empowering women to lead on energy system transformation. We had a very successful first year of the program where we focused on the areas that you see on this slide with women at system operators and utilities around the world, and with women in engineering programs at universities that represent the next generation of the workforce that will be required to operate these really highly advanced grids. And the picture that you see here shows some of our interns that took part in one component of our program over the last year. So the first area that we focus on is building technical skills, again, to plan for and operate these really advanced power systems that will be needed to address our urgent climate crisis. And this is in collaboration with many of our incredible partners through the Global Power System Transformation Consortium, which I'll talk more about in a moment. And then to build on the technical training component, we also provide agency-based empowerment training in collaboration with Johns Hopkins University. And this is really to support women in questioning limiting beliefs that they might have about their potential in the world. And then on addressing institutional barriers, we collaborate with our partner USAID and Engendering Industries in this really critical area that is focused on really ensuring that women have support within their institutions to be able to move into leadership roles to advance. And so we work directly with engineering industries, with HR departments specifically on this component of the program. And then finally, we've built a network of women through the Women in PST program and through champions within the GPST to support mentoring and really networking among these women. And so I'll dive into each of these areas on upcoming slides, but from kind of a high level, we feel that empowering women requires this holistic approach, and it's not just about the technical training, it's about also supporting women, again, in questioning those limiting beliefs and ensuring that their institutions are supporting them as they're moving through different positions in the workforce. Oh, this one I have to click a lot. I'm gonna go ahead and check. I'll click through on this one. Okay, I think that's all of them. Okay. So one of our most exciting and unique offerings through Women in PST is the opportunity to participate in fellowships at some of our GPST founding system operator institutions. I'll talk about them more in a moment, but these founding system operators are system operators that are already operating very advanced grids with very high levels of renewable energy integration. And so this slide kind of outlines some of the cutting edge topics that participants can dive into during fellowships that are so critical for power system transformation. So things like developing forecasts and plans for the evolution of the electricity grid, establishing market rules and grid codes, and ensuring safety and reliability of the electric grid. Oh, I didn't do the thing. I didn't do the hand wave. That's why I ignore it. Okay. Okay, so this slide presents our partners of the program through the GPST and some of the institutions where we offer technical training and fellowships through the program. So at the top here, you see our founding system operators. So we work with California ISO, with ERCOT in Texas, National Grid in the UK, Energinet in Denmark, and AEMO in Australia to bring women to these institutions to do fellowships and technical training. We also offer opportunities for women to visit our technical institution partners, NREL, the Electric Power Research Institute, and others. And we also have on our slide our emerging economy system operator partners here. With each of these partners, we're already, we're either already bringing in this gender component with the work, or we're exploring bringing this gender component with the work. Okay. Oh, wait, that's not the right one. Okay, that's okay. Oh, this is the right one now. Okay. So building on the work directly with the system operators and utilities, Women in PST is also supporting the pipeline of women engineers and technicians at universities that can lead on power system transformation. So this is where I'm seeing some really good connection points. So we developed some really cutting edge power system courses that are geared at engineering degree programs. So this includes 4 to 5 hours of recorded lectures, supporting teaching materials, student exercises, solution sets that are on 4 topics that we saw as kind of gaps in educational material around the world, and that will be needed for engineers to be prepared again for these really advanced systems. So topics are on declining system inertia and dynamic reserve requirements, power system stability with 100% inverter-based resources, impact of EVs on power systems, and network planning and pricing to support the net zero transition. And the really cool thing about these courses is that they're all delivered by women. So we feel that this is so important because women in the university setting can then see themselves in those sorts of technical roles. And they were designed for really easy adoption into existing power system, electrical engineering, and power electronics curriculum, and can also be used for self-upskilling or professional development within utilities or system operators. And we're planning to release more of those in October 2023. Okay. All right. So as I was describing before, gender diversity and inclusion challenges are apparent across the power sector workforce pipeline, including underrepresentation of women, students and faculty at the university level in technical degree programs where training for the power sector workforce of the future is taking place. So we are very much focused on creating kind of this complementary course package that not only has the technical training, but that also provides introductory materials for instructors and professors to be thinking about gender equality and how to bring that into the classroom more broadly. We also have developed some inspirational materials where women that are already in leadership roles at system operators and utilities and other energy sector companies are talking about their journeys to leadership. And those can also be used by universities to support recruitment or to actually play those videos in the classroom, again, to inspire women to take on these types of roles and professions. Oh, I'm gonna go back because I did have one more slide, but I think I have the wrong order here. Sorry for the hiccups here. I don't know if I know how to go. Oh. That's not it. Okay, well, I'll just make my last point here by saying partnerships, coming back to partnerships. We have some really amazing partnerships with Johns Hopkins University and Engendering Industries, and we bring that into all of the work that we do. So with Johns Hopkins University, they lead on the agency-based empowerment piece that I was mentioning. So all of the women that we work with on technical training, on fellowships, on internships, they also receive that training from Johns Hopkins University. And then Engendering Industries, we work with directly to ensure that the institutions that the women are returning to actually have policies in place to support them through HR and through leadership and through other channels and gender equality policies in place. So I had a slide on our partnerships with those 2 programs and institutions, but yeah, I think that's it. So thank you all so much.
Okay, moving right along. So where are we now in this program? We've heard from a corporate leader. Agnes shared with us what corporate executives, if they commit to something, what they can achieve and how they can contribute towards the overall journey. We've heard from Maria Teresa about what universities and academic sectors can do in terms of creating a very powerful pipeline and encouraging women and young girls to really participate in a in a transition sector, but they have a real value to offer. It's a strong value. We just need to make the case. We heard from Sadie about the interface between technology and clean energy solutions for the transition and the role of people in that, and how do you really make that role gender inclusive. And so this is really a right time for us now to put all of this recipe together. And I'm really, really delighted, absolutely, to also introduce our last speaker. I'm going to read. So this is Professor Diana Abigail Basuil, who has a very powerful and fancy title. But her work actually is even more powerful than her title. She is the professor and executive director at the Ramon V. Del Rosario Center for Corporate Responsibility at the Asian Institute of Management. That's the key, which means what she's doing is taking knowledge from different places and putting them into one place. How do you take all of this and make something happen, to do something? So that is kind of what you do. I know your work is very well cited. The last I read about you, that your work is cited somewhere by about 1,100 people around the world for the work you've done. So we're really very much looking forward to hearing from you, the role you play, and how you tell the managers and leaders of tomorrow. By the way, I should tell you that I'm especially grateful to Diana, because she had a flat tire coming here, and one of her talents is that she knows how to actually change the flat tire, but she found somebody else to do it for her.
All right, where's this fancy clicker that everybody seems to be having problems with? All right, good morning, everybody, and thank you, Vinod, for inviting me. And I'm happy to share what we have been doing around inclusion, and corporate governance is really the crux of what we do at the Center for Corporate Responsibility. And I'm happy to be able to somehow project that to what can be done in the energy sector. And so here is how my next 15 minutes would work. So I'm going to talk about corporate governance challenges posed by energy sector transition through clean energy solutions. And then I'm going to talk about new opportunities for gender responsive approach to governance in the energy sector. And then I will close off with public and private reforms in corporate governance to create greater opportunities for women at all levels in the energy sector. So whenever I talk about corporate governance, I always get asked, so what is corporate governance all about? And really, corporate governance covers a lot of processes and policies in organizations that are there for the purpose of long-term success of the company. And when you talk about governance, it's usually around talking about these different stakeholders of the company. So you have shareholders or owners, depending on the size of the company. So you can have, like, public company have shares, right? You can have, of course, your customers, suppliers, employees, and final stakeholder is the community. And whenever you talk about corporate governance, the main mechanism that is being used to implement this are the boards, right? So for those that are not, publicly owned, you have board of advisors, and then, you have board of directors. And normally, when we look at corporate governance, in a very traditional way, there we go. It's really about self-interest, right? So this is how we traditionally looked at corporate governance. It's about the interest of each of these stakeholders and how can they be met by the company. So if you've got shareholders or owners, it's usually around what is the return to their investment, okay? When you have customers, of course, in the energy sector, it would be around accessible and affordable energy. That would be their main interest. Suppliers would want to have steady demand for their raw materials. The employees would want regular, well-paying jobs. And of course, the communities, they would want to preserve their culture and their environment, which normally gets threatened whenever you have like this, big plants being set up in their communities, right? So traditionally, we've looked at corporate governance, right, in terms of balancing this self-interests, right? And normally, right, your shareholders and your owners are on one side, okay, and they actually have the heavier weight. And you've got customers, right, and then suppliers and employees, and sometimes the communities get forgotten. But obviously, when you are, operating in communities with your power plants and the kind of getting the natural resources, it's hard to actually forget about them, right? But some companies do. So it's really a balancing act. And the board of directors, because of a lot of the processes around electing who the board of directors are, they normally get elected because of, the shareholders. They want their interests to be preserved, and so they want to have representation. But, it also, corporate governance is about, measuring success in something that we know traditionally is how we measure success, like, stock prices, right? Profitability, revenues, all those things that can be measured. And usually, hopefully, it's something that is increasing over time. So when corporate governance, when you talk to people, researchers like myself, what is it about? It's about, trying to align a lot of these interests that sometimes are not necessarily, okay, not necessarily pretty much in sync, okay? And nowadays, though, right, we are in a transition, like what the speakers before me have talked about. And really, it's around this kind of, situation where we find ourselves, okay, with a burning planet that, we are now realizing, hey, we all live in the same planet and there is no planet B, right? And we need to take care of this place we call home. And so instead of, these different stakeholders in the company thinking of their self-interest, what we're now seeing is more of a collective purpose. And so people are now thinking, how can we work together, right? Because we are all living in the same planet, right? We don't necessarily have like just our own to think about, right? So now you have this thinking around, we are all in this together. And as a community, we want to create peaceful, prosperous people and planet, right? And that is where the SDG goals come in, right? Because while now we realize that we are in this, planet all together, sometimes we forget that some people actually may not survive, right, in the next day, week, or year if they don't have jobs, right? There's a lot of poverty. So now we're also thinking, look, it's great that people are like becoming more cognizant of taking care of the planet, but how about the people in it? How do we create prosperity? So now there's that collective purpose. And in terms of the owners and shareholders, they're not just thinking about profit, they're thinking about profit, people, planet, and hoping to actually also contribute to prosperity. In terms of customers, they don't just want accessible, affordable energy. They perhaps also would want renewable energy so that we can take care of the planet. For the suppliers, perhaps a supply of circular materials, things that are already out there, so we don't have to touch, a lot of the virgin materials to create, these materials that would be supplied in the industry. And of course, in terms of the employees, it's about not just well-paying jobs, regular jobs, but about decent work and a diverse working condition. And so that's where a lot of my work is around. I work with an international labor organization around implementing international labor standards. And so part of that is around creating a more inclusive workplace. And so a lot of what
I'm going to share with you are things that we have gone through also around talking with companies as they transition towards this more responsible behaviors. So we work with OECD around that and really harnessing this collective purpose. What can we do now that we have a higher, awareness that perhaps self-interest is not enough and that we need to actually act together. And so in terms of the opportunities for gendered governance in the energy sector, the speakers before me have talked about putting the gender lens, and really there is that opportunity to use those gender lens in the energy sector, right? For example, on the shareholder owners, of course, we're talking about, private capital commitment in renewable energy, but a lot of that is still in the solar PV sector because that's actually the one that's more commercially viable. So there's still not a whole lot of uptake around those, other technologies that are still very high risk. So, there's an opportunity for the shareholders to rethink how they can measure success in terms of the long term rather than the short term. And of course, Agnes mentioned about the whole ecosystem, and in the other sectors, there's actually a greater amount of women entrepreneurs. And whenever in the studies that we have done and the research has shown that when women are actually the owners and the top executive, there's a very high likelihood that a lot of their policies are going to be gender sensitive, right? So in terms of customers, of course, we know that energy is a commodity. I used to go to Starbucks just to drink coffee, but now everybody's like, trying to get the seat with the outlets, right? Because everybody's now needing to charge something. So energy is a commodity, and it has to be, be able to be accessed by the customers that in a reliable and affordable and sustainable way, right? So the customers are already requiring that. And of course, we know that there's a disproportionate impact of price volatility in low-income families because every time it's, energy prices rises, the disposable income component of energy for low income is higher, so they feel it more, right? And that is where some of the low-income customers would say, maybe I don't want renewable because then it would tend to be very expensive. So there's that kind of balancing. Of course, for employees, compared to traditional energy, Agnes mentioned this, there's higher women participation, 32%, right, in the renewable energy. So that is definitely a good sign. But unfortunately, women still get paid less. And of course, we have also seen what Sadie mentioned about senior management, and there's still a need to actually increase that. And hopefully by having, women owners, there will be more of that senior management, women senior management increasing. And for suppliers, of course, mineral mining, if you think gender is probably a big problem in energy, definitely much more in mining, right? There's a lot of gender bias and health-related risks for women in the mining sector. And of course, partnering with women entrepreneurs down the supply chain would definitely help that transition and increase women participation. And of course, in communities, women have greater voice and take on more active roles on how energy is used and produced. And, the things that Vinod was mentioning around unconscious bias, those are things that are really, really important to increase women's voices and overcome the barrier from gender role stereotypes and become agents of change so that, they can actually become more participative and collaborate more with the solutions, right? So in terms of what are the possible reforms that can be done in order to make this transition happen? Of course, Maria Teresa mentioned about access for women to STEM-related education, vocational training, and entrepreneurship, having gender-sensitive curriculum and also faculty. So Sadie also mentioned that having role models, right? Internships, mentorships that promote women's talent, definitely Vinod's program can be a beacon for that. Scholarship grants, not just for students, but also faculty and mentors, right? So that these women can actually thrive and get a very successful career in the energy sector. There's also a need to implement national law supporting work-life integration, because a lot of the barriers for women is around care work. And here in the Philippines, these are just two examples of laws that we had way back: Telecommuting Act 2018, and also Early Years Act, which is about creating daycare centers at the barangay level, which unfortunately are not being used by employees. I don't know anybody who's got children who's like 0 to 5 who would take their kids to the barangay daycare center to be, cared for so that I can go to work, right? But there is those laws. Telecommuting, which is remote work, even before the pandemic, already had a law, and still it wasn't implemented. I mean, people cannot just ask their managers, can I telecommute, and those things really need to be pushed so that they can actually help, women become more successful, not just in the energy sector, but in the professional sphere overall, right? And of course, incentives for gender disaggregated data collection, like public procurement. In Australia, they have this really good program. So something that I can share later if you're really interested. On the private sector, I know Agnes mentioned about entry, retention, promotion, and Vinod as well. But again, flexibility is very important, providing flexibility on how the time the work is being done, place, leaves, career, those are really important. Workplace practices for inclusion and belongingness. And really, the thing here is to value differences. What are the practices and capacity building training we can do to realize value in differences? Of course, support infrastructure, not just in the actual infrastructure, like in the energy sector, a lot of the infrastructure is not geared towards women, but also in terms of the supervisor manager, because a lot of the research shows that even though companies have very supportive policies, it's the managers, right, that actually prevent employees from taking advantage of those policies. So role models and allies up to the board level, very, very important. And quotas as a starting point, but not the goal, meaning it's good to be able to track it, but that's not the end point. I think the process behind it is also very important. And I know I'm out of time, but I just wanted to make sure that we understand when we do inclusive workforce, it's about making success look like not just financial metrics, but other performance measures like innovation, like Agnes mentioned, learning, agility. I thinks about having a diverse workforce, becoming more innovative because they bring different perspectives. Because when we are different, we teach ourselves and our others on how to become different. And there is value in that. The importance of safe environment for questions, ideas, experimentation, and of course, tapping into the deeper pool of talent. Most especially, why are you pursuing inclusion is very, very important. So from the top, the tone and the role model is very important. Redefining jobs and roles to widen our concept of competency, because sometimes a lot of our perception is just about able people, and normally in the energy sector, it may be around, male employees, and of course, supportive and inclusive people leaders. Very, very important. So sorry for taking too much time, but thank you very much.
All right. Lots of things I heard, but here is what I took away. I heard another phrase, which is music to my ears. This time it's Mozart, not Beethoven. Shareholder and shareholder value. So if you're thinking like a corporate sector, why do we need governance? What is the purpose of good governance? How do you know that you have good governance in a company? Shareholder value. If you can deliver shareholder value, that means you're operating on a corporate governance model, which is doing exactly what you're supposed to do. Now, when I engage with a lot of ministers, and in some cases even prime ministers and so on, who will look at me and say, this is such a common sense, it's so easy, why it's not working? Well, often the clue to the solution of a very complex problem is very simple. Our minds are wired that if the problem is complicated, the solution has to be complicated. Well, this is generally not the case. So when we deal with public sector officials, ministers and so on, they have a shareholder. Shareholder are the citizens. They must deliver value to them. So many, many years ago in Bangladesh, I was talking to one of the ministers there. I said, I don't know why people are not paying for electricity. And I said, Mr. Minister, we've done some work here and so on. Here is the reason. Every one of these people that I've talked with will pay for electricity at a reasonable price, provided you provide them good electricity. The utility company that breaks down, when the electricity is available from 2 a.m. to 5 a.m., that's when it's available. But the rest of the time, it's not available, or it goes up and down, voltage fluctuations and so on, busts your appliances and whatnot. In other words, you, sir, are not delivering shareholder value. And that's the job. So now coming back here to just an equitable transition. We now have evidence. We have evidence that if you have an inclusive workforce, productivity is higher, shareholder value is higher. I think this mantra needs to be adopted not only by corporate sector, where the profit is the motive, but also by all other sectors, academia, civil society, and governments, policymakers, and regulators. So when we work with these organizations, this is the value we create. In the interest of time, I think that we will proceed next to the questions and so on. But first of all, if you will join me to thank our speakers for sharing your wisdom. And I'll start with I had a lot of speakers, but I'll start with just one question now. I think it will be very informative. Can you hear me in the back? Can you hear me now? Hello, now? Okay, great. All right, so I have a bunch of questions here, but in the interest of time, I'll just ask one question. And if each one of you really will give me what I call a digested version, which means tell me the punchline. Tell me the punchline so we can share that. Here's the question. The beauty and importance of partnership comes from the fact that we are able to bring different people from different walks of life with different experiences towards a common goal. That's what we're trying to do. So we're dealing with engineers, political scientists, economists. You put two economists together, you have 5 opinions. So we're talking about quite a challenging situation here. So the question is as follows. As you move in your journey, you, Diana, in terms of what you do, Maria, in your own university, academia, and so on, I'm sure you come across non-believers, right? Diana's laughing. Is that so? What are some of the trades or techniques from each one of your perspective? Like when you talk with, for example, the technology is stuff, the engineers don't just swallow it beautifully, but the political scientists, people say, what is she talking about? Okay, so how do you really bridge that gap? How do you really bring people from different walks of life, different experiences, different regions, different countries to create what is called merging of the thought process towards a common goal? Dan, may I just go with you, please?
Yes. So I think for me, the most important thing is to work with like-minded people at first. It's very hard to convince people to do responsible business, as we have seen sometimes if they don't really believe in it. But if they give it a chance, we try not to think of it as, say, kind of greenwashing or them just, not being too altruistic. Anybody who wants to make a difference, we give them a fair shot. And it's up to us to actually make them accountable, kind of making them commit to this every time, right? so that we know that it becomes part of their practice and they keep doing it. So that's one of those things. And also the other thing I really adhere to in the advocacy that we have is that we need to make sure those that start it off their journey towards transition, inclusion, and all of this SDGs, we make sure that they are hopefully as successful as possible, because every time they are not successful, it's even harder to get them back up on the saddle. So we try as much as we can, in the beginning, to give them measures of being successful, even though they're small wins, but make them feel they're successful so that, they don't let go of this commitment. And, because then they always go back to me and say, Dinah, this doesn't work. I'm sorry. I tried, doesn't work. So let's forget about it. So those are the things that we try to do. And hopefully, I'm sure everybody already resonates with that at some point.
Okay, I agree with Dinah on looking for champions, because we need to have gender and development advocates within the university. And to change mindset in a subtle way is to introduce in an annual basis different programs that really supports women in the academic setting. So for example, USTP has a child minding center. So we cater to the employees, teaching and non-teaching, and even students, so that they can leave their child in the center for 8 hours from Monday to Friday. And it's not a simple child minding center, because the ones running it are licensed teachers. So there are academic programs for your child. So you can do art, or you can do reading and writing. So it depends on the parents upon enrollment. We also did the lactation room, one in the university clinic and one near the gymnasium, because we believe that when people becomes accustomed to how to support women, then it becomes a culture. So every year we do Magna Carta, we do Safe Space Act orientation, we do sexual harassment, we do a lot of messaging in social media, in our website, in our school papers, in the walls of the school, because we know that when the message becomes a reality, people will believe that gender and development is a possibility. It might be a long and tiring work, but as long as we do not stop and we continue to convince more people, because there's strength in number, eventually the whole university can subscribe to the idea that it's better to be with gender mainstreaming initiatives, that it's better to be gender inclusive and gender sensitive, because it's what our world requires for now. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm a bit newer to this space, but I actually think the time is right to be talking about gender integration in the energy sector. I've been surprised by how much excitement and motivation there is to be doing work in this space at this moment. And I think it's kind of across the board with our system operator and utility partners, government partners, others. Everybody seems motivated to be working on this. And again, I'm newer to this space. So I think the other thing, just coming from a technical institute, I think it's been very refreshing for our partners and funders to hear us talking about this issue that isn't just on the deeply technical side. And I also think for our staff at NREL, they've been really excited and motivated to work on this as well. So I think when we can bring in these areas of interest for people that people can really get behind and be passionate about, it helps to keep our people at NREL, our staff at NREL, excited about their work that they're doing as well. So
I think in our case, every partnership in a corporation, it elevates our potential to do what we want to do. But internally, what we do is we concentrate on two things. For our people to deliver, around 3,700 of them and 9 subsidiaries that I need to oversee, for them to deliver, we do a lot of capacity building. Always 50% of our time is on capacity building. The other thing is at the individual level, we need to understand that the unit of change is the individual or the employee. And therefore, we do a lot of embedding, because we need to let them understand gender equality, and we need to converge the personal interest of the employee and the purpose of the company. We used to gamify all of our programs on embedding so that they can easily absorb that. And of course, the tone from the top, our leader must be with us, and he is with us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. How's that? Yeah, good. Okay, so in the interest of time, I think that I want to thank all of you very much, and that in parting, share with you just a few one-liners. And that's what my own takeaways from all of this, from the wisdom that we have seen here. I think we all agree that energy sector is and must transform. There is no doubt about that. It's not only any longer an issue of comfort and climate, but really there is a case to be made. There's an issue of national security for nations and for the world as a whole. Therefore, there is a very legitimate calling on governments, businesses, academic institutions, the civil society to do their part in partnership together, to not only embrace the change as it comes to you, which is a reactive approach, but to drive it, to be really a proactive partner in the process. Some of the work that NREL is doing, you're driving change, you're exposing people to technology. That's what we need to do. It's almost like a missionary kind of a thing. Knowledge sharing and creative partnership development. When I say creative, that means it's not just partnership for the shake hands and be a partner. We've got to really show results of that partnership. What did that partnership achieve? And I think that all of you are doing that, and the work that you're doing, which is fascinating, and that's why we have you here. We will get there. The journey is a fascinating journey. It's not easy. It's going to be very challenging. It's long. It's going to require a lot of steps. So I'm going to share with you 4 of my favorite words in the English language are, one is how to. Those are the 2 words. Because we all know there is a gap, there is a problem, there is a challenge. We also know what are some of the wonderful things we can do. What we are struggling with is the how to. And the second 2 sets of the words that I have are, so what? So a lot of times people say, well, we did this and we did this. And if I may have trained 100 people, if these people are not applying the training to their jobs, I haven't done anything. I just have produced numbers. That's all. So I think that we have to be really, really rough on ourselves a little bit in terms of the test. And then the final point I would like to make, which I think is very important in this setting, as well as the global setting on gender issues, there is still out there a lot of non-believers, and we really need to keep repeating our message and keep making a shareholder value argument. So passion, commitment, and wisdom, not to sacrifice good in the pursuit of perfect, is very, very important. We want to get to that result, but let's not forget in the meantime little successes and build upon them, like what you said. And then finally, this is my favorite phrase. This applies to families, this applies to companies, this applies to universities, applies to discuss the undiscussable. And with that, I would like to end this session and thank everyone very much. And now you can have your lunch. And I have my deputy COP is the one who taught me, don't mess with people's lunches. So that's what I learned from.